I want to jump right into the juicy conversation around emotions. Because I think this is one of the most beautiful things about being human is the fact that we have emotions. And at the same time, emotions can be extremely challenging to work with and move through. And then you throw on being a woman on top of that, and it's just like, holy crap, how in the world do we deal with this world of emotions, right? And I know for a lot of us as women, we tend to deal with emotions in one of two ways. And so I want to talk about how to actually deal with emotions in a healthy way and how to actually move away from the ways that you have been doing emotions that are actually very unhealthy and actually toxic, because we can use emotions for our benefit, or we can use emotions for our detriment. And if we use emotions for our benefit, we can actually really build and create beautiful, beautiful healing relationships that nourish us and like light up our soul and make life just feel sweeter and brighter and all the great things, right, that emotions can bring. But if we feel that emotions are taking over, it can really create a feeling that, you know, life is just harder and heavier and darker and intense and just so many other things that are not what we want to be feeling on a day-to-day basis. Can I get a yes on that? For sure, right? And I will first preface this by saying that we can never really fully master emotions. Like, emotions are always going to be there for beautiful opportunities to teach us things, right? So there's so many beautiful things, ways I want to talk about this. Let's first talk about the scale of emotions, right? So when we think about emotions, there is like this whole scale of how we can feel on a day-to-day basis. We can feel anything from down in the dumps of despair and depression and darkness and heaviness. And we can feel all the way up into anger, into frustration, into irritation, into kind of just blasé, right? Then we get into these kind of neutral feelings that are just kind of contentment, or just maybe boredom, or just feeling kind of less than but not bad, just kind of, you know, in the middle. And then we start moving into more of the so-called happier, good feeling emotions, right? Of feeling excited, feeling eager, feeling uplifted, feeling inspired, feeling motivated, feeling driven, feeling elated, feeling, you know, grateful, right? With gratitude being on the high end of the spectrum here. And with just complete darkness, depression, resentment, I think despair being at the other end here on the spectrum. So emotions are really an entire spectrum. And the thing that I see and hear from women is that lots of times it can be really, really hard to manage this spectrum of emotions, right? Because they're all coming up all the time, and every little interaction and life circumstance just causes us to just go, oh God, there's new emotions coming up. How do I deal with this? And so we tend to just push it down, or we tend to just blow them up, right? So I want you to type a 1 in the chat box if you're the type that pushes them down, and a 2 in the chat box if you're the type that blows up with emotions. And there's no judgment here. This is just really about bringing in awareness and starting to understand, like, where am I how do I manage my emotions right now? And is this a healthy way to manage emotions, or is this something that I really need to maybe work on and figure out a better solution to make sure that I am using emotions to my benefit, right? So we push them down or we blow up, but neither of these are healthy ways to manage emotions. Because when we do this, if we're pushing down emotions, what that's really doing is it's making us feel like we can't be safe to express ourselves. And if we can't feel safe to express ourselves, then we just end up getting to be these like shriveled versions of ourselves, which doesn't feel good. And it makes those emotions almost like a lid on a pot. It just puts a lid on a pot, and it just makes all these emotions just bubble and start to get like bigger and bigger. And next thing we know, out of one moment, right? It's just like, and those emotions just fly off the handle, literally. So that is not a healthy way to be managing emotions. And so if this is something that you tend to find yourself doing when you are feeling any sort of feelings, just observe that and just notice it right now, okay? And then the other type of it, of managing emotions that is not healthy, is being in this place of blowing up in the feeling, in the moment, in that reactionary space. And this is not healthy either, because obviously we do not want to be dumping our feelings onto our relationship partners, onto our friends, onto our family. It comes across as very messy. It comes across as not feeling very grounded, very settled in yourself. And at the end of the day, you're leaking energy and you're dumping your energy onto people. And that's not being very responsible with your feelings. So here's the challenge with this. It's like, okay, Teal, I know that, right? I know that how I'm managing my emotions is not healthy right now, but what do I do about that? Because I don't know how to handle this. There is another way of handling our emotions. But the challenge comes in is that we as women have been taught many times is that we can't actually show our emotions, because that is the sense of feeling weak or being emotional or being needy or being clingy or being any sort of type of like kind of damsel in distress. And so it's not safe for us to have feelings. And men have to deal with this too, right? It's not safe to show feelings, to have feelings, to communicate feelings. All of that is a no-go area, no zone. Like, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Don't go there into the feeling world. But what we do when we end up showing up in that way, both as men and as women, is that we end up cutting ourselves off from our heart. And when we cut ourselves off from our heart, we're cutting ourselves off from the beautiful realm that emotions do provide for us, and the whole realm of where intimacy relates to others, right? Have you ever had just a really beautiful, nourishing conversation where you've connected with somebody? Hi, Tammy. Good to see you here. Where you've connected with someone and you've just felt there's just this heart bond, right? Where you're able to just truly be in your essence. You're able to really communicate everything you're feeling, everything you're sharing, everything, and they're just able to hold you in that space. That is the beauty of getting to drop into your heart and have a heart-to-heart connection. And this is really where intimacy and love is created. But the challenge is that if we never let ourselves go there, into our feelings, into our heart space, and don't let ourselves go into our emotions, then we are literally cutting ourselves off from being able to have a heart-to-heart connection with anybody, but specifically with men in this circumstance, right? Because it's usually always scary to go into our heart space, go into those emotions with men, because of this exact conditioning that we've been told that, hey, if you communicate your feelings, you're going to be seen as needy or weak or emotional or all the things, right? So it's important to recognize that although this is what we've been taught, this is not the real way to create a long-lasting, healthy relationship. And I speak about this specifically because I also very much had this belief for a very long time. I felt like I had to be strong. I felt like I needed to prove myself that I was worthy of being around men and being able to have relationships with men. But when it came down to it, I was so scared to actually open up my heart and communicate how I felt, because I did not want to be seen that way. But what ended up happening instead was that I just ended up pushing people away without even realizing it, because they'd start to get close and they'd be like, ooh, she's cool, I like her, right? Like, ooh, let's figure out, let's go deeper. And men would crave that heart-to-heart connection, but I wouldn't go into my heart. I could not go into my heart. I didn't want to feel my feelings. And all these feelings were bubbling up, just being like, oh my God, let me out, let me out. And so I just put a lid on it and clamp it down. And I would just pretend that everything's fine, everything's cool. And give me a 1 in the chat again if this is something you've also experienced. If you kind of put a lid on things and smile and make everything feel fine on the outside. Well, newsflash, men can sense it. They can sense it, they can feel it, and they know that something's off. And they can't exactly tell what it is, but they can tell that something within you is off. And it's weird, but it's beautiful. And it's true. Because something is off. You are off with you. You are not being in fully alignment connection with your soul, with your heart, because of this other fear of actually fully expressing ourselves, right? And type in any questions if you have any questions of anything that's coming up for me. I'm happy to answer these questions for you. So The biggest take-home message here that I just really want to bring up here is that emotions are not bad. All emotions are beautiful. Emotions are this whole spectrum. They are an emotional guidance system that tell us if we are in alignment or out of alignment with our highest self. And that emotions are the key to, and the portal to the heart. And from the heart is where we create love and connection and intimacy. And so it's the most important place for us to be able to access and to get comfortable with and to start communicating from, to actually start to open up and create those much deeper, meaningful relationships in our life. With one caveat, and I really want to make sure that you guys hear this, is that we do not want to be acting in our emotions, okay? So if you're watching this and you're like, okay, Teal says I have to be more emotional, I need to go communicate my emotions. This is not about if you're crying and you're just feeling all these things to just go out and just start sharing them with someone. That's the messiness, right? That's the dumping the emotions onto someone, being emotional. You can be emotional and you can have emotions, but they're two very different things. So being emotional is being in the energy of the emotion and dumping the emotion onto someone. Having emotions is about learning the tools and the inner strength of how to actually handle your emotions in a healthy way, and then communicating them in a healthy way so that men and family and friends are able to receive it and feel it from you and say, wow, I can hear you, and yes, and allow them to drop into their heart space so that you can create that deeper, healthier connection. And that's the difference. And this is something we go into in depth into my coaching program and into my Relax into Love Master course. And it's so important to be able to really get a hold on how we actually manage emotions. Because if we're not managing our emotions in a healthy way, that's where we can really get things really messy. And that's where relationships get really messy. Because men are like, I don't want to go into my heart. That doesn't feel safe. And you're here in your emotions, not making it feel safe. And so neither people are able to actually really move through emotions together in a way that feels healthy and feels safe and supportive for each other. And so what ends up happening is we just end up shutting away. We end up just shutting off our hearts and just going, okay, fine, we won't go into our hearts. We'll just stay up here in our heads and we'll just, do the daily actions. And what happens in that regard? We just end up being kind of buddies and partners and friends, and that's when the passion fizzles out. That's when the love starts to dwindle, or the attraction starts to dwindle, because there's no juiciness in it. There's no juiciness in the mind attraction. You can be attracted to somebody's mind, but you're really, what is the long lastingness is the attraction to their soul, right? An attraction to that heart. But if neither person's going to let themselves drop into their hearts, we're just not going there. We're not making that connection. So wanted to leave that with you here for today. Feel free to write any comments, write any questions that you have, and I can address this deeper. If you want to learn more about the Relax into Love Master course, you can DM me and I can give you a little snippet of what we really go into in depth with this, because this is so deep and so transformative. Oh my God, transformative. You get the picture. If we don't learn how to master and manage our emotions, it's just setting ourselves up for a minefield, right? And this is not even addressing any sort of past emotional baggage or wounds or anything like that. We also need to heal those things, but we can do it so much better when we know how to take care of ourselves, and when we know how to really feel safe in our feelings, and from that place communicate that safe way of communicating our feelings. It makes all the difference. So I want you to really think about that for today. Am I operating in a healthy way in my relationships with my emotions? Or am I falling into one of these two toxic traps of either pushing them down or blowing them up? And if so, reach out to me and let's really figure out how to actually help you move through this, because like I said, this is going to be a life changer for your relationships. Have a beautiful day, loves. Mwah.